Record to the clouds. Hi, my name is Renee Hobbs and welcome to EDC534. Today's date is February 17th, 2016, and we have with us tonight Alex, Kate, Tiffany, Diana, and Tracy. So let's just do a microphone check. Tracy, can I hear your microphone?
I don't know. Can you hear my microphone?
You sound marvelous, marvelous. Diana, let's check in on your microphone.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, that's too adorable. Alex.
Round 2 on checking.
Yeah, she sounds magnificent. Tiffany.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, you guys are too cute. I see Zoe and Max have joined us. Can you guys check your microphones with us? Microphones, Max and Zoe.
Hello.
Adorable. Max, I think you have a little bit of background noise, but maybe that's just me. Can we check your microphone?
Yes, can you hear me? Everything good now?
You sound marvelous.
Sorry, it's me.
Aha. Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. We're going to kind of talk a little bit about our agenda tonight. So here we go. Really, first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about your compare-contrast diagrams. Those were quite marvelous. And I do hope that you have had a chance. Whoops, let's make sure that they're coming up. Where are they? Let's hope that they will show up in a minute or two. One of the things I appreciated was something really powerful about the experience of making a compare-contrast diagram is that nobody solved this problem exactly the same way. Everybody solved this project a little bit differently. So one thing I noticed is Diane Watt used Creately. Diana, you used a combination of at least two different tools. Tracy used Pictochart. Kate used Padlet. Steph used Padlet. Alex used Pictochart. Kristen used Poplet. But even more important than the tools you used, what was really fascinating was how you solved this problem. So it was really interesting to see how some of you addressed the focus on creativity as a process. Others of you focused on the sort of emotional truths that can be told when using a combination of image, language, and sound. A lot of you focused on the relationship between creating, connecting, and collaborating. And I especially appreciate how you brought in quotes from the different readings that you are making sense with this week. So I appreciate the good work that you did on the comparison contrast diagrams, and I hope that for many of you that stimulates your planning and thinking about LEAP 1. Okay, well, so the next up for us to talk a little bit about is the highlights and lowlights of your use of Mendeley. Mendeley is not the easiest software in the world, but it's got some affordances, as we like to say. What were your highlights and lowlights of using Mendeley this past week? Who wants to go first? Highlights and lowlights of using Mendeley. Tracy?
I know that Diana and I struggled just a little bit to get things in the right places and to
I
get
struggled with that too.
connected appropriately. Question, and I really like the combination that Mendeley has with this sort of idea of almost like a giant Facebook page for research. collecting this whole social media aspect for research. I like that. I see a whole lot of overlay with Mendeley and Evernote. And Evernote
Me
is
too.
a lot easier to use.
Yeah,
I think
nice
more
analysis. Say that again, Alexis.
Oh, so I was just going to bounce off Tracy that I'm very familiar with Evernote. I've used that for, since 2011. And I mean, I use it all the time for everything. And when you first assigned using Mendeley, I was kind of like, well, I mean, I can already do these things on Evernote. But I think one really different aspect between Evernote and Mendeley is what Tracy's getting at, is that social aspect, where she's right on the money, where it looks like a Facebook or some other sort of news feed where you're checking out what everybody's reading and researching. And Evernote is only just really starting to tap into that social aspect with their work share and things.
I have a question, just because I didn't get a chance to get to it. Did anybody else use Mendeley to annotate something, and did you use it not on an Apple product?
Ooh,
I used
good
it to
question.
annotate, but not on an Apple product. I did on an Apple product.
You did it on an Apple product.
Yeah.
Apple products annotate really, really well in Evernote, but if
Yeah.
you're in a Google Chrome environment, like probably 25-30% of the time, which is a huge problem if you're in a classroom environment trying to teach kids to annotate, because getting them to annotate once is tough, twice is not going to happen.
Thanks for sharing that. So there's definitely some medium specificity on these tools. Any other folks want to weigh in on how you perceived the highlights and lowlights of using Mendeley?
I agree with what's been said with regard to finding where to post the PDFs, and that was difficult. But I was comparing it with Zotero, which is what I had been using, and I found that it was easier to use as Zotero, and I don't know if that's saying much.
Right. I would agree. I would agree with you, because I've used Zotero, and Zotero is really just a bibliographic reference manager. So this is better because you can keep your notes with your files a little bit simpler. Yeah.
I've used another tool that's similar to this called Digo, and even then I thought Digo was easier to use and a little bit more intuitive than Mendeley was.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Digo is a really great tool for a K-12 learner, right?
Spell that.
Diigo.
I would not have guessed that. Okay.
Got it.
I think Zoe is unable to use her microphone, or because she has that background noise, so she shared in the chat. Zoe, can you give me a thumbs up if you want me to share out? Okay, so Zoe said her highlight is that Mendeley makes her more connected to this academic community, but that her low light is that it does really clarify the distinction of different functions. She shared that in the Zoom group chat, but is unable to vocalize it. So,
Alex, thanks for representing Zoe's point on Mendeley. I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to. Explore Mendeley, in part because of this idea of the tools that are now emerging to create really a knowledge community. And that is kind of one of our themes for tonight's class, this idea that scholars in this area are participating in multiple knowledge communities. And Mendeley really embodies that idea of a knowledge community online. So I want to kind of directly address that by doing just a tiny little bit of mini lecture about the readings tonight. I think I and the doc students might have been the only ones who read all the readings. So I wanted to walk through with you what I considered to be the big takeaway ideas for the readings for this week. the key questions we were thinking about in relation to these readings is, what does digital authorship look like in different contexts? What key elements are present across different contexts? And what are some important distinctions here? Now, can you guys give me a verbal, if you can see this slide moving to this slide that says context of digital authorship? Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good show. So there were 9 articles in this constellation, and they really did address a really wide range of different contexts, with 4 focusing on K-12 school settings, 3 focusing on colleges and universities, and 2 focusing on media arts organizations or at-home use of digital authorship or media making. And even still, these 9 articles are only a tiny, slender exploration of the many different contexts in which this work is occurring. But it is kind of interesting to see that graduate students who are preparing to be principals and superintendents are getting exposed to some aspects of digital authorship. That's the Friend and Metello article. And it's interesting to look at all the different ways in which digital authorship is being used in the context of K-12. I think it was probably worth thinking about how the authors, I selected this package of this set of authors trying to give you some exposure to the different theoretical frames that that underpin the work of these authors. And so what I'd like to do is get a sense from you now. Did I get this list right? So did I capture the different perspectives of the different theoretical frames of these authors as you understand it? And maybe what I'd like you to do is talk me through one of the articles that you read and tell me which of these boxes do you think it fits in?
Would you mind bringing the screen back up?
Will do. So which of these boxes do you think this fits in? Let me see if I can figure out how to bring up my screen. I think that'll do it. How does that look?
Perfect.
You can see it now?
Yep.
So tell me about something you read and tell me which box or boxes you think it fits in. These are like the families, or if we're thinking of these as discourse communities or knowledge communities. What did you read and which box do you think it fits best in? Max?
Okay, so I read Goldfarb, and one, I just saw on the initial slide that, you grouped that with the more media organizations, so outside of school settings, although I definitely think there is some overlap, but the main focus for that reading was definitely like media studies, but in that, Goldfarb analyzes how media studies, just understanding the technical and skills for production and media production, is a lens or a tool to better understand culture and society, and how some of those nuanced ideas about power and oppression illustrate themselves through the mass media and popular media that we watch or consume and produce.
Wow, nice. Thanks for starting us off so well. Tiffany, can you tell us about something you read this week and which box you think it fits into from a theoretical frame point of view?
Yeah, I actually read your article. I looked at, talking about the video production. So I would say the media studies, and I'd say it was pretty close to the critical cultural studies as well, just because of its talk about civic engagement. But definitely the media studies with its discussion on video production and then how that contributed to adolescent civic engagement and their correlation.
Nice. So Tracy, can you tell us a little bit about an article that you read and where you think it fits in this constellation of theoretical frames?
So I actually read Goldfarb the same as Max, but I heard different things, Max. So they spent a whole lot of time in that article really talking about how film in the education sort of became the redheaded stepchild of the education world. Like it's the thing that teachers who aren't teaching do and that sort of thing, which is not entirely the case. And they made a really good argument that the media itself is culture, kind of like Max was talking about. But there's no real distinction between high culture, taking your child to an opera, as opposed to watching on Saturday morning. It all sort of feeds into that culture. And I really what I really connected with the article is the fact that we sort of miss this a lot of times when in ed courses we're talking about culture. Culture is where people are from, what language they speak, but we miss this whole sort of subcultures that happen around us because of the media that we're more accustomed to. Does that make sense?
Oh, wow, nice. So you're drawing a thread between the red boxes in media studies and critical cultural studies, and maybe that box around curriculum and instruction, maybe that box around literacies, thinking about where some of the gaps and absences are. Nice work. Clarissa, you're the last one I'm going to call on. What did you read and what theoretical frame do you think it fits in?
That's a trick question. I read all of them. But I will comment on Kavori.
Cool.
Because I was interested in the Thinking Television Project just to learn, what it was. I liked the idea of it. I would think critical cultural studies, media studies, and multiliteracies. I think literacies for the students had to have or develop, tap into some literacies. But basically, the project was a 4-year project where students were given kind of a prompt to propose TV shows. It was a critical media literacy project, obviously, and they were told to create TV shows that would represent unconventional realities and that would sell.
Right.
And the result was they seemed to believe that it was a failed, that it was, in terms of cultural transformation, the project was a failure, and they kind of discussed why. But I thought the prompt was a failure because I thought that if you tell them to make it sell, then you're asking them to conform a little bit to what's already there, right? So, but I thought it was an interesting to see the different shows that they proposed was more interesting than the analysis of their shows, I thought.
Yeah, actually, what an interesting way. So you offer us a good summary and a good critique of that piece. And that kind of leads to where I'm going here. I've now just moved to the next slide in my little mini lecture. It's really important for us when we encounter works of scholarship to understand that scholarship is part of an ongoing conversation. And you might have just entered this conversation, or you might have been in this conversation for a while, but in fact, if we organize these 9 pieces kind of in time, Goldfarb takes us all the way back to the turn of the 21st century in his writing about media arts organizations. And so if we look at these articles placed on a time continuum, one thing is really obvious is that the 2010s are bringing us a lot more experimentation in the context of the K-12 sector, and the 2010s are also bringing us more experimentation in the context of professional development and supporting teachers' learning as a mechanism to bring that in. We see that, of course, in the Miller article, because that's a meta-synthesis of 26 published articles about students and teachers who participated in a shared PD program. And we also see that in the Friend and Metello piece about the grad students who are training to be superintendents and principals who are making video as part of their graduate learning experience. So there's a lot of momentum here and a lot of diversity as a result. From my point of view, the most important thing to begin to start paying attention to is, how do these different scholars make knowledge claims? You know, on what grounds or with what evidence do they use to base their claims to new knowledge? And there's probably a lot of ways we could talk about that, but at the very basic level, we can think about how some of these articles focus on texts, right? Goldfarb does a historical narrative and theoretical analysis of some of the work of media in education. And Schneider, Crumpler, and Rogers do an examination of the history of process drama, right, as a pedagogy in the art education sector. The PAC is a book review, but it's a book review about a book that's about the historical development of media production as within the writing and rhetoric community. And the meta-synthesis that Miller did is really a critical reading of these other publications. And the Kavouri and Matthews, as Clarissa, as you pointed out so rightly, is really a close analysis of some of the student projects or their proposals that they developed. So some scholarship is grounded in looking carefully at texts. And we can think of the different, that as a kind of methodological choice. Other scholarship really focuses on the process, like the Friend and Metello piece that describes the curriculum and instructional strategies for teaching those grad students who are enrolled in the ed leadership programs, with some marvelous student work samples. If you didn't get a chance to click on some of those Vimeos that are in that article, I highly recommend it. There's some really interesting work where future principals and future superintendents are asked to create documentaries about, for example, racism in their own communities and how it's affected the education system. Really interesting stuff. And the Shanahan piece, which, ooh, what did I do here? I did something wrong. Sorry. And the Shanahan piece, which looks at a 5th grade teacher and points out how her print-centric ideology interferes with kids' creativity as they're making media. And then finally, a focus on learners with the Patricia Lang and Mimi Ito piece on the case studies of people who create, kids who create media at home. And then my own piece on kind of survey research. So we have a kind of empirical look and a qualitative look. So I think it's really important as you read through the rest of the semester to be always asking yourself, on what grounds or with what evidence does this scholar make claims to new knowledge? Okay, now it's time for a pair share activity. Check out these themes of interest. There's a million ways to slice and dice our reading, but in my look at what you posted on Mendeley and what you chose to share, the new materials that you brought into the conversation on Mendeley, I thought these 6 topics might be worth spending a little bit of time on. What learners do when they engage in the creative media production process, what motivates teachers to bring the creative process and production activities into the classroom, what teachers do to support and or structure media production learning experiences, how teachers, learners, and schools intersect with their communities as part of the learning process, how mass media and popular culture are implicated in practices of digital authorship in and out of school, and how curriculum design and digital technology usage shapes learner work processes and work products. Now, here's the concept. You saw where I got these from, right? I am still sharing with you, and you can see it there posted as Hobbs mini lecture. Give me a thumbs up if you can find those slides on your own now. Yeah? You got them, right? Okay, here's what I want to do. I'm gonna dump you into a small group, and you and your partner are gonna have to choose one of those 6 topics to focus on. What I'm hoping that you do is using your own lived experience, right, and your expertise, along with what you've been reading and thinking about, to see if you can drill down on what claims to knowledge can we make. So pick one of those 6 themes. Stay focused on that one theme. Don't stray too far from that. They're all interconnected, of course, but see if you can focus as much as you can on that one theme, and then see if you can drill down. What knowledge have you gained from reading? What knowledge have you gained from life? And what claims or insights can you and your partner generate in thinking about what do we know about that one topic? Okay, give me a thumbs up if you guys know what we're going to do and know what we're going to talk about. I'm seeing lots of thumbs up. Okay, Zoe, you're looking confused. Are you clear, or you want me to explain a different way? Oh, she's trying to talk, but she can't talk. Okay. All right. Here we go. Here comes the breakouts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see if this works. 8 participants go into 4 sessions. I'm going to give you about 7 minutes to have a conversation, and then we'll come back and do some synthesis, okay? I just love how this works. I just think that's so cool. Okay, we are coming back into our main group. And it looks like almost everybody is back. And we are still carrying on a little conversation too in the chat room. So I'm happy to see that. Okay, so why don't we just walk through these themes of interest a little bit and see which ones of those captured your imagination. Okay, which ones of these themes of interest captured your imagination? Diana.
We did number 5.
Aha! Well, what did you say about that, number 5?
Well, we wanted to talk about what is the definition of digital authorship and what is considered mass media. Then we went into popular culture. Then we talked about the differences in her grade that she works with as an elementary. Clarissa, talk a little bit more. You were good at it.
Okay. I was just saying, like, putting my feet on the fire, she just throws me in the fire. Okay, I'll go. So we were talking about how several of the authors, both last week and this week, kind of, particularly Burgess, talks about how there is a connection between mass media and the unconventional participants, particularly the digital narratives, that were a source of new knowledge, and also we talked about appreciating, one thing that we didn't talk about, I think, earlier was Goldfarb's challenging the canons and how visual pedagogy should take us to a place where things that are on the fringe maybe should be brought to the middle. And a lot of those things will come from popular culture, we said. The other thing that came up, I think, was Diane had a great example of her project and what she's doing currently with the students. And if you want to talk about the Ellis Island project.
Okay, I have my 5th grade. It takes us a while to do this, but I use primary sources. That's the librarian in me. From the Library of Congress, we pull them in. The students help select the pictures they want. They drop it in. They're making a video. It's at a story, Photo Story 3. Mm-hmm. And in the process, they can have a partner. They talk about what it would be like to come to the United States to go through Ellis Island, so they become the immigrant. And the hardest part of this at the beginning is they'll come to me, well, can I come from here? It's your story, you tell me. Can I come from here? Can I do this? It's your story, you tell me the story. So once they get past that, they can make their own opinion, tell their own story. They really get into it. So it's the whole process. We start with the story concept and we just move on. I had a couple of boys today came and said, can we come from Ireland? And I said, sure, it's your story. Well, what do they speak there? They speak Irish? Well, I think they speak English and maybe Gaelic. So they ran off to the computer to look how to say hello in Gaelic.
Oh,
so
how cute.
So they're going to find out more information. So we're truly learning as we're going along, making this one little simple video.
Wow, what a great example. And that what I like about that is that example is actually touching on number 3. What do teachers do to support or structure media production learning experiences? Clearly, you're giving students choice, right? And that choice is a big part of that. And yet at the same time, there's a fair amount of structure in terms of what this assignment can be about. Thanks for sharing. Alexis, I know you also tackled the themes of interest number 5, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what ideas came up in our conversation?
No, we didn't talk about number 5.
What did we talk about?
Kate and I talked about number 2.
Oh yeah, number 2. Thanks.
Yeah. So we had a little technical difficulties, but hopefully I've captured everything. So we talked about what would motivate teachers to bring assigning things like, like understanding of creative process or production activities into the classroom, like why a teacher would want to do that. And so we talked about a teacher wanting to foster some collaboration between students who have been exposed to these sort of technologies and might have some sort of familiarity, and have them working with students who may not have had this exposure, so that they can help kind of everybody get onto the same page, and not be holding back the people who may already know how to do it but aren't stifling the people who don't know how to do it. So then we talked about teachers bringing in these sort of activities to help students prepare to go out into the world. So we called that sort of community development, because you'll have a kid who knows how to make some sort of video and could, then see an issue in his or her community and make a video about it and get it out there. Other than that, we talked about teachers wanting to engage students in hands-on learning opportunities, and a lot of districts and classrooms are being pushed and urged to do these kind of processes. So that might be a motivation for a teacher to bring it in. And then Kate pulled from her experience as an international teacher to talk about how these sort of activities can really help English language learning students, because for one thing, these sort of activities can help them transcend language barriers. And on the other hand, they can also develop that language as well, as well as transcending those language barriers. And the last thing that we kind of talked about was teachers bringing these activities into the classroom to engage the students, but also to empower them. And I think that kind of hits on some of the readings that we've read for this class about how students feel like they have a voice in online communities and that their opinions and thoughts have been heard.
Wow. Nice synthesis. Kate, do you want to add anything to that, to the insight that we just heard?
Well, unfortunately, I missed some of it again because my Wi-Fi keeps dropping me. And so Alex and I were trying to patch together a conversation. I don't know if she covered this already, but I covered the Thinking Television Project as my initial reading. And then we're just talking about kind of the critical media nature of it, because the creative processes that I've incorporated in the classroom has been from trying to overcome old schools of international development thought. And again, just trying to create voice and empowerment. And often, though, I'm dealing with students who don't have the technology access, so we're only able to do some very basic things. But
Right, but actually I appreciate the point you're making around situating that work in response to, as a counterpoint to an older paradigm that's got problematic representations and stereotypes. So I think that's a really key, thing to add. Tracy, I'm going to let you have the last word on this. What did you and your partner talk about? Which topic did you tackle, and what key insights did you make?
So we talked about number 4 and how teachers and schools sort of intersect around their communities, and they sort of can participate in a community learning process. And we talked about a couple of things. Some of the issues that we have generationally dealing with immigrant teachers and Native students. That was one of the things that Max, I believe, hit in his article pretty heavily. And then we talked too about a couple of examples. I know that in Rhode Island, there's a group called Learning 401, which records the stories of students that are traveling. Specifically, I think they started in Central Falls, but traveling through high school in Rhode Island. And it works almost like Spielberg's project with the Holocaust, where they just record the experiences of people so that they can advocate for themselves, they can express themselves, that sort of thing. And then we talked too about sort of the professional intersection between what's happening in a classroom. And then the article that I put up, an article by McKee that was about a college classroom that was attempting to intersect with the outside world, making film and commercials and documentaries specifically for outside sources, and how bringing in that extra parameter really sort of helps creativity to a certain extent. I think that's pretty much it, right, Max?
That was great. Max, you want to add to that? That was a good synthesis. What could you add to that?
Yeah, just definitely with the parameters helping out with creativity. Kind of goes back with a few of our other readings as far as putting up those challenges and causing those producers to really use all the things in their toolbox in order to figure out how they can really apply their own personal identity and creativity to the project. And then Tracy was pointing out, as far as the question between digital natives and digital immigrants, we were kind of discussing about how for digital natives, it's sometimes harder to observe some of those nuances within like the media culture and how those are represented. Whereas with the immigrants, or sort of the people who observe this digital change and the way that mass media and popular culture has developed, it's easier for them to break down and pull apart those influences and those stereotypes and those messages that culture is kind of sliding in there, sometimes overtly, but sometimes as sneakily within the media.
Really nice. And I'm just gonna add one little piece to that that generational theme. For me, the most troubling, disturbing of the pieces that we read this week was the Shanahan article. This is a very critical look at a 5th grade teacher who has incorporated some digital media production, but is doing it with her print-centric ideology. And the researcher is, I can just imagine the researcher sitting in the classroom just going, ah, ah, right? Watching this teacher tell kids that images are just for decoration, right? And the words are what really matter. And she's actually discovering, the researcher is watching the kids discover that they know more about visual language and visual storytelling than the teacher does. Or at least the way that the teacher has framed the assignment so narrow and constrain the kids in the way they can use images to share what they've learned about acid rain, that the learning is really compromised. And that's a painful article to read, but it also reflects how most of us we have biases and we're unaware of our biases, right? And so in some senses, there will always be generational gaps because of how hard it is for us to see our own biases. And so at the same time, it kind of being sensitive to how people experience things, recognizing that there'll always be these gaps in how our values and how our experiences shape how we make sense of these new ways of learning.
And how the institutional and the conventions that we know the students are facing inform how we approach, what we do also, rather than just the personal too.
That's right. The institutional context, which tell us what to value.
The flip side of that, and it's really the same sort of, I see school digital worksheets and call it digital learn. Like you're still stuck in the worksheet. You're not doing the actual problem solving.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go. So that's exactly right. And that's kind of building to something we're going to be talking about next week. So in a way that gives us a little bit of a good transition. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen with you one last time and talk a little bit about what we're going to do next. And, let's see if we can kind of start on time and end on time. Okay, I did just want to remind you that next week, your LEAP 2 project is due. And the week after that, your reflective multimedia essay is due. So these are the 2 big deliverables for the next 2 weeks. If you're local, Rhode Islander, I invite you to check out the Providence Children's Film Festival, which is in its final weekend this weekend. There's some really cool youth media work being showcased there on Thursday, Friday, and Sunday of this weekend. So I hope to see some of you there if you can make it, because it's a great way to see local youth media. And I think stuff from all over the country as well. Here's what I'd like you to do for this week. I want you to watch this short video to learn a little bit about how media production occurs at a really kind of famous middle school in England called the Parkside School. I want you to watch this short film to learn a little bit about the City Voices, City Visions project. That's the Suzanne Miller project at the University of Buffalo. So you're going to watch 2 different videos about 2 different approaches to teaching digital authorship. Then I'm going to ask you to choose 2 of the 3 readings here. Select 2 of these 3 readings and use the Moot discussion board to offer your reflections on the perspective shared by the authors of these readings. We're thinking of these 3 focus questions for next week. How does collaboration support and extend the creative process? Why do creative people work together? How do they work together? And obviously, we're going to pay attention to what kinds of problems and challenges come as a result of collaborative work together. We're reading a pretty famous article from Lissa Soap and her colleague Vivian Chavez. We're reading a chapter from Patricia Lang's book called Kids on YouTube. And I couldn't find the hospital dramas from Andrew Byrne, the British guy. He's the guy who founded the Parkside School, which you're going to be seeing inside of. But he has a very nice little lecture that he gave a couple of years ago at the Institute on Education in London called 6 Arguments for the Media Arts Screen Education in the 21st Century. I think that's a good, relatively good piece for this next week. Finally, because our theme is collaboration, compose at least 3 tweets to reflect on the rhetoric and reality of collaboration as you have experienced it in any aspect of your life. Use the course hashtag EDC534 to engage with peers as you reflect. So we're going to be thinking about what we personally have learned from collaboration. And we're going to be thinking about what the authors are sharing with us about the opportunities and challenges of collaboration. Do you guys have any questions before I let you go? Tracy.
So the link for Leap 2 keeps sending me to a blank WordPress document.
Oh, damn. Okay,
Right.
Thank you for letting me know, and I will fix that immediately as soon as I get off the call.
Okay, and I've
Okay.
I have not had a chance yet to check the reflection link, but if it does, I'll
Ping me.
yeah, I'll ping you.
What other questions do you guys have? All right, you've wasted another perfectly good Wednesday night because you are obsessed and crazy grad students enrolled in the graduate certificate program in digital literacy at the University of Rhode Island. You are diehards for leadership in digital literacy. Thanks for joining me. I'm Renee Hobbs. I'll see you guys a week from today, Wednesday night, 7 o'clock. And remember, your Leap 2s are due. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.